The strike what happened at Nevatim tonight, the unthinkable happened, and the world will never look at Middle Eastern air power the same way again. 40 of the most lethal, most expensive, and most sophisticated combat aircraft ever built are gone. Not in a dogfight, nor in a battle over contested airspace, but destroyed on the ground, in their shelters, before a single Israeli pilot could even reach the cockpit. $4 billion in American aerospace engineering vaporized in the darkness in just 30 minutes by a nation that Washington has spent 5 decades trying to strangle with sanctions and covert operations. The F-35 Adir, Israel's crown jewel, each unit worth over $100 million. The most advanced stealth fighter on the planet. The aircraft that was supposed to make Israel untouchable and invincible in any theater. The plane that Washington guaranteed would maintain Israeli air supremacy for the next 3 decades was destroyed by Iran with a missile system that the Western defense establishment had dismissed for years as a regional nuisance or mere propaganda. Last night, that there were cost Israel its entire forward airstrike capability in a single operational window. Nevatim Air Base, the primary home of Israel's F-35 fleet and the launch point for every major strike in the region, was hit by a salvo so precise and overwhelming that neither the Iron Dome nor any layer of defense could prevent the catastrophe. As the smoke cleared over the Negev desert, the strategic equation had been permanently rewritten. Israel entered the night as the dominant air power and exited it without an offensive air force. Washington, which guaranteed Israel's military edge as a cornerstone of its foreign policy, now finds itself facing a gap that no emergency resupply can fill overnight. 3 questions anchor our analysis. First, how did Iran execute this precision strike without triggering an adequate warning response? Second, what is the Fath-360 actually capable of, and why did the world's most expensive defense fail? And third, with the fleet decimated, what comes next? Does Washington have any response that doesn't ignite the entire region? The Fath-360, the weapon that rewrote the rules. Understanding the magnitude of this requires understanding what Nevatim represents, the operational heart of Israeli dominance. It houses F-35s equipped with sensor fusion and unmatched stealth technology. Every strike against Iranian assets in Syria or Hezbollah originated here. Destroying Nevatim isn't just breaking planes, it's destroying Israel's ability to project power. Iran understood this with absolute clarity. The strike began at 2:17 a.m., a deliberate calculation for when defense crews are at their lowest alert, and shift changes have just occurred. This was no coincidence. It was planned with intelligence gathered over years that the West catastrophically underestimated. The initial phase involved a wave of decoy drones that flooded radars with hundreds of simultaneous signatures. The systems managing the Iron Dome entered what engineers call saturation paralysis. While interceptors were exhausted against decoys, the Fath-360 salvos were already airborne, launched from Iran and Iraq at angles that radars were not adequately oriented to cover. The missiles arrived in groups of 8 to 12, hitting specific hardened shelters. In less than 4 minutes, Israel had no path to a coordinated response. Simultaneously, a parallel strike hit Rewrote Air Base, where the F-35 Tidis 35 Ichitis Bisteitis Dakar Berbitintis Day burst for safety. The fact that Iran knew exactly where those hidden planes were reveals deep intelligence penetration. By 2:47 a.m., 30 minutes after detection, the numbers were unbelievable. 40 aircraft destroyed or critically damaged. Fuel and ammunition depots in flames. Israel's offensive air capacity was neutralized in half an hour. There's no modern precedent for this. In the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel destroyed 3 air forces in 3 hours. Last night, Iran did the functional equivalent in 30 minutes with ballistic missiles from 1,000 kilometers away. The Fath-360 went unnoticed by Western analysts, who categorized it as a regional tactical system, not a strategic game changer. Last night, that assessment was demolished along with Israel's hangars, Washington's response, paralysis behind the podium. What analysts ignored wasn't the Fath-360's range, but its terminal guidance architecture and employment doctrine. Conventional missiles follow predictable trajectories, but the Fath-360 invalidates that assumption. In its final phase, it activates a system that compares the terrain against a preloaded digital model. It doesn't just follow GPS coordinates. It sees the ground and identifies specific buildings with an accuracy that GPS alone cannot achieve, and that jamming cannot degrade. This explains why U.S. interference didn't affect Iranian precision. Furthermore, by using solid fuel, they don't require a long fueling sequence. A mobile launcher can fire and disappear in minutes. Iran designed its salvos to exceed the reload capacity of Israeli batteries by a defined margin. This isn't guesswork. It's applied engineering. Every component of the Fath-360 was developed and produced entirely within Iran. Washington's sanction system, designed to prevent this, has completely failed. What sanctions actually produced was an Iranian defense industrial base that is more self-sufficient and resilient. Necessity forced innovation. Hours after the attack, the White House Situation Room was at maximum capacity. After frantic meetings, what emerged was a statement calling for restraint. So, that word landed in Tel Aviv like a second missile strike. And the standard U.S. playbook for an Iranian escalation is demonstrate air power, threaten retaliation, and force de-escalation. But today, every step faces new complications. Moving carriers back into the Gulf implies a risk level that Naval Command no longer seems comfortable accepting. For a threat to be credible, Iran must believe it will be executed. But its actions show they believe the U.S. is self-constrained. Additionally, a massive strike against Iran's missile infrastructure would activate Hezbollah and other militias, unleashing a regional war of a scale where U.S. military models cannot guarantee a favorable outcome at an acceptable cost. The end of air supremacy. There's a question no one in Washington asks publicly. If Nevatim could be hit with such precision, what happens to U.S. bases in Qatar, the UAE, or Turkey? The Pentagon's silence is the answer. For 75 years, Israeli security rested on one pillar, absolute air supremacy, the ability to strike anywhere with impunity. Last night, that pillar broke. 40 F-35s represent 60% of Israel's operational fleet. Those that remain are dispersed at civilian airports under constant threat. Iran now controls the tempo of what happens next. Operations in Gaza and the Northern Front with Hezbollah have changed character overnight with the Air Force under such pressure. Each F-35 costs $100 million, 40 polizakhrons. Planes are $4 billion in direct hardware loss, an unprecedented blow to Israel's defense budget that no aid package can solve at the speed the situation demands. Globally, the post-Cold War order in the Middle East was based on the assumption that U.S. military primacy was unquestionable. Iran rejected that framework. For 45 years, Iran absorbed maximum pressure and last night destroyed the most advanced Western aviation at the most defended base in the region. The message to the world is clear. The power framework is negotiable. Russia watches with strategic satisfaction while China studies how this area denial strategy succeeded in a live environment. A new Middle East is born. The Gulf monarchies, which built their security on American guarantees, are recalculating. The rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, mediated by China, now looks very visionary. What happened at Nevatim was not just a battle, it was a sentence written in fire declaring that the old rules are dead. The Fath-360 didn't just destroy planes, it destroyed the fiction that technological superiority guarantees security against a self-reliant adversary that prepared for decades for this moment. Israel wakes up without an offensive air force. Washington wakes up without clear military options that aren't catastrophic. Tehran, for its part, has proven that strategic self-reliance is not just a moral aspiration, but a real military capability. The next question is whether anyone on the other side has the wisdom to recognize that the old playbook is finished, that the only path is negotiation with an Iran that has proven it cannot be coerced. That question doesn't have a comfortable answer, but it is the right one. Every development following this event we will analyze here exactly as it unfolds.